Now the networks that I'm trying to deny are all of the networks behind the router A as well as the two networks. What that means is basically every network that's behind the router A router. So I can use any keyword now for the source. So we're going to do an access list 101, deny TCP, any, as our source, and the destination is once again going to be a host 172.16.12.100. This is going to point towards that web and FTP server that I have down in our branch office. This is actually denying everybody from getting to that device. I then need to specify EQ and need the World Wide Web HTTP or port 80, and I choose to use the port. I have now denied everyone access to the web. Now I need to begin to do my permits. I need to make sure that I have permitted my router A router to get to that device utilizing FTP. So let's go ahead and use the same line. This time we will choose a permit statement, and I need to specify the specific host, 172.16.2.2, to get to host 12.100. This time it's going to be equivalent to, or EQ FTP, which is port 21. When I hit enter, I have now created the third of my lines in my list. Last but not least, I need to make sure that I do provide a catch-all for everything else. Remember that we do have to continue to ping throughout the entire process. I have denied my telnet, I've denied my web, and I've permitted the TCP host, which is my router, to get to that host for the purposes of FTP. I want to make sure that since I'm using deny entries, that I also permit everything else, just so that there isn't any issue. What we're going to do now is, we're going to go ahead and do an access list 101 permit IP to cover the entire IP stack and any transport protocol that might be in use. Any, that's going to be my catch-all to permit everything else. What that does is pretty much invalidate that implied deny at the end of the list. The implied deny is an access list 101 deny IP any, and if I put in a permit IP any, that's going to be my final match. That will match everything else that passes through this router. The only thing I have left to do is to assign it to the interface and then to test the scenario. But before I do the assignment, let's go ahead and take a look at what our access list actually looks like. We're going to do a show run command first. When you use the show run command, this is going to give you at the very bottom a printout of the entire set of access lists that you have created. And you'll notice my standard access list that we did before, and now my new extended list with 4 lines. I am denying my telnet, denying my web, allowing my FTP, and also permitting everything else. One thing to realize is that I could have permitted everything else without this third line, but I want to make sure that you can get as much exposure to writing this list as possible. So I could have actually written this list with only 3 total lines. The first 2 plus the last one of permit any, and that would have solved the equation as well. Let's make sure that we're familiar with the list. Another way to get familiar with the contents of your list is to use a show access list command. When you use this command, you will notice that it shows both of the lists, but the only thing it doesn't validate is the command up front. It doesn't show the access list command. So this would not be a good place to cut and paste from if you're trying to create that text file with the list contents. But it does show you the specific list. Right now, though, I don't have any interface assignments, so at this point, we're going to have to go to the interface and make the assignment so that we can perform our testing.